Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the show on this Thursday, the 29th of July, 2021. Thank you for tuning in. Glad to have you guys here. Now, yesterday was a watershed moment. What I mean by that is, you remember that show I did about 2 days ago called Danger, Will Robertson? Danger. From the old movie Lost in Space. It's kind of a takeoff on that, but we were facing danger. The Fed, I was thinking that there was a moderate to high percent chance that the Fed would embark on some sort of a tightening project or tightening. And the markets would have responded to that. They were ready. They were ready. And they didn't do it. Well, since then, I found out that the Fed's divided on this issue. Some, they realize there's members within the Fed that realize if they continue on the path that they're going on right now, that we're going to head into very high inflation, if not hyperinflation. And so some of them wanted to try to stem this thing off before it gets too entrenched, the inflation. But they didn't prevail. The Fed took a course that is very dovish. And they've talked about putting off any sort of tightening till way off in the end of, the end of 2022. The final quarter of 2022, I think it is. Anyway, so far into the future that we're not going to get there, guys. Like, it's a pipe dream to think that we're going to get that far into this without having hyperinflation first. So, this is the course we're headed in. There's a possible... Now, I heard this morning that there's a possible strike maybe going to happen with the border guards. And it means goods like trucks and stuff, I guess. How do they get through if the border's not only closed, but then the border guards walk off the job? Well, Canada, if you live in Canada and you're watching my show, you better think about this. There might be shortages coming if that happens, if the border goes on strike, because they won't let trucks through and stuff. I don't know. It's tentative right now. I don't know if they're actually going to do it, but I think it's early this month. They might. Maybe. It's one of those things. I just heard the news story this morning. Anyway, another thing that's a big concern is the renters in the United States. An awful lot of people are behind on the rent. They say they have $30 billion to cover the rental issues, But the thing about it is there's an awful lot of that's going unreported, and there's going to be an awful lot of evictions that are going to be coming up right away. That puts pressure on society in general when you have a lot of people that are basically evicted out into the street. And then we got more stuff going on, is the fact that when these prices start to rise and everything, it puts pressure on everyone. And pressure creates anger. The more pressure, the more anger. And, this last year, I can sense the anger in the people out there through their comments and stuff. There's an awful lot of anger out there that's being suppressed, and the anger is directed toward officialdom. Now, what do you think's going to happen when people just can't afford to make ends meet, meaning that their paychecks and stuff doesn't last until the end of the month because inflation's gobbling it all up? And that means that they come with some very hard choices come with that. Because they don't have enough money. Because prices have doubled. When we move a little bit further into this, what do you think's going to happen? Well, it's a recipe for disaster. We are in big trouble. Because we're headed toward a hyperinflation. And the problem comes with the anger problem that's going to come with it. You think you've seen people angry now? You think you saw people angry during the COVID crisis? You haven't seen nothing yet compared to what a hyperinflation can do. Just look at Venezuela. You know, what happened? What happened there is basically threatening to happen to the whole world. The whole world is threatening to become a Venezuela. Anyway, let's get started. Let's open up the charts right here. Take a look at what's going on in the markets today. We see the silver price soaring. You know, this didn't really take off until we saw what the Fed's actions are going to be. Now silver price is taking off, and you know, I think if things stay the way they're staying right now with the Fed being accommodative, we could have our breakouts in these metals in the next few months. You know, silver price at 25.73. It's up 79 cents, and gold's at 18.28. It's up $20.60. These are big climbs, but it might be just being started. The gold and silver price coming unhinged and shooting to the moon would be a clear indication of a failing currency. We're very, very close to the moment where confidence starts to be lost in the purchasing power of the fiat currencies, the dollar being most notable. Then what happens is inflation is a self-feeding, self-perpetuating cycle. It feeds upon itself. People lose confidence, more people lose confidence. They start to spend money. As they spend money, prices start to go up. As prices start to go up, the whole thing just feeds itself. And once it gets going, the powers that be have the tools to fight deflation. They just basically print a lot of money. You can kill deflation. Anytime you want, you can kill deflation. But how do you kill inflation? You print a bunch of money, you're just going to feed it, make it worse. And if you stop printing money, the whole economy will collapse completely and utterly. And so they're trapped. They realize that they're trapped. And this is why it's divided the Fed. We have a divided the Fed. The Fed's divided on this issue, whether they should go out and fight inflation or whether they should just sit back and not collapse the economy. Well, the ones that don't want to collapse the economy want to keep things on the status quo and keep the punch bowl. They won the argument. I'm going to tell you guys, they're right. That's the way to stretch this out longer. Because for those Fed members there who have the belief that, hey, we'll tighten policy now and we'll bring inflation under control, all they would do is create a crash. And then they'd have to fix it with even more money, which would bring the inflation in even faster. So the whole thing is done. It's done. We've passed the event horizon. I've been telling you guys this, done shows on it not that long ago, how we've passed the event horizon now. We're hurtling into the black hole, and there's no way to stop this hyperinflation and the terrible things that are going to come with it. It's, if we had a deflationary collapse, it would shut down the entire system, and it would just bring everything to a stop, and the world the sky would fall, in other words, what I'm saying. But with a hyperinflationary collapse like we're headed toward, the sky doesn't exactly fall, but you don't get off the hook either. It's going to be a situation where there's areas that are going to basically disintegrate, and you're not going to want to be in those areas when it happens. And I don't know what those areas are just yet, but those areas are going to be the areas where we already have seen trouble. Densely populated regions. So that's where the biggest, most likely areas that are going to be the areas that are most impacted by this. And how it's going to be impacted is with crime. It's going to soar. Not just soar, it's going to be unbelievable in those impacted areas. And it's very likely that it's going to be difficult for the power grid to maintain power to those areas. And in fact, there could be outages in certain areas. The power just doesn't get restored because there's too much crime, too much law, too much loss of law and order, too much loss of control for the system, for a hyperinflating system. It's just too hard, and so that's what I think we're going to see is these patchy areas that are densely populated run into huge problems where nobody wants to stay in those areas. Uh, because we're heading toward a hyperinflation. And this is what hyperinflation does. Just take a look at past hyperinflations in countries that went through it, like Weimar Germany and Zimbabwe and Venezuela, and on and on the list goes. But that's what it does. It disintegrates to a certain degree, disintegrates society. And yes, they'll continue to use those dollars when we get into hyperinflation. They're going to use those dollars. They're going to keep using those dollars, and you'd be surprised how long it's going to stretch out with the dollar just continually every week going down faster and faster and faster in what you can purchase with it. What's that going to do to savers? What's that going to do to people who are on fixed income? What's that going to do to uh, uh, retirees and stuff? Is going to be absolutely abominable. But there you go, and that's where we're going. Time, if you're a retiree or something, it's time for you to get some of your money into other areas besides out of the dollar and into places that are going to hold up your purchasing power. And it's a matter of preserving wealth rather than thinking, oh, I'm going to get rich. It's a matter of preserving your purchasing power on that money that you're able to move into those alternatives to the dollar, because they're going to keep up with inflation. The dollar won't. And so, like, I'm speaking about silver, for instance. It'll keep up with inflation. Uh, as the inflation goes higher, the price of silver will keep going higher. And it'll probably actually exceed the price of inflation at a certain point. It might double the price of inflation. So it might quadruple the price of inflation. So $1 invested now, silver could easily, in a hyperinflation, easily go up into thousands of dollars per ounce. But still, you got to consider that the currency doesn't buy near as much anymore as it used to. But still, depending on where you purchase it, maybe you purchase silver right now for $35 an ounce. And what happens is what could you purchase right now with that $35? Well, when the hyperinflation hits, it might actually double that purchasing power or even more. So if you kept it in dollars at $35, it would buy nothing in the hyperinflation. It wouldn't even buy a piece of bubble gum. But the silver, if you sell it, would be able and transfer it into the hyperinflating currency. You'd have to move fast to get your purchasing power back, because if you wait a few days, you know. And they're going to keep using that hyperinflating currency until finally it gets to the point where they've added so many zeros it's absolutely insane. Then they've destroyed all past debts, basically. When they get it to the price of an apple, it's like $10,000. You know, they've basically destroyed these past debts that they're creating now. They've dissolved them through this hidden tax of inflation. See, the debt's gone beyond reckoning now at this point. We have over $100 trillion in unfunded liabilities and massive debt that they can never repay, so you have to default. So default only comes in one of two ways. Either you're going to have an outright default, or they're going to default through hyperinflation, where it's a slow default, where they basically rob the dollar of all purchasing power to pay off these last debts that they've created now. Now, for people who have credit cards and stuff, things like that, get them paid off during the hyperinflation, for goodness sakes, because they'll pull a trick on you at the end of the hyperinflation where they reset all that debt over into the new whatever currency they come up with. Maybe it'll be a central bank digital currency. So get all your debts paid during the hyperinflation if you can. And they're going to get easier and easier to pay these debts because the dollar is going to be going down in its purchasing power. You know, and for these guys out there who say, okay, the dollar's going to go down in purchasing power, but we're going to see interest rates go to the moon, don't kid yourself. They're going to keep those interest rates low because they can't let them go up any longer. They can't service their own debt. So basically, we're in an environment where we're probably going to see negative rates. At the same time, see inflation through the roof. And negative rates only because they're controlling the rate. The natural inclination of the rate is to go up during inflation. They're already suppressing that. We're seeing rates going down. Now, speak on one other thing before I move on with these charts. The government out there right now is going through this thing where they're using the Treasury General account to pay their bills and stuff. And so we're not seeing the production of a whole bunch of new treasuries, and this is helping to push the rate of the treasuries down. But this is a limited factor because we're going to see the rates start to creep back up toward 2%, or maybe a little bit over, maybe head toward 3% on the US 10-year. Once they end this debt ceiling and the government starts to produce a whole bunch of new bonds and stuff to pay their debts. So, boy, what a time. We're going to move on now. We're going to look at cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency is $1,546 billion. We're looking at a Bitcoin price of $40,104. So Bitcoin, the cryptos are doing good right now. Will they do good off of this type of environment? Inflation. Inflation feeds cryptocurrency. Feeds gold and silver too, you know. Dow Jones Industrial averaged 207 points up. It feeds the Dow Jones. Take a look at oil. Oil is 73.04 today. What do we got here? Move index today. Now you notice how the move index is going up and it touched 70. Now it's back down to 62.40. When they become accommodative. Because when they become accommodative, the Fed, then it takes the pressure off of these money, the money moving within the upper end of the system, you know, the credit markets. They're more likely to extend credit if the Fed's being accommodative. When the Fed gets tight, or they worry about the Fed's going to be tight, the move index was getting tight too, and it was going up. Now we see it crested and peaked and starting to come back down. The credit markets are getting a little bit looser again because the Fed is being accommodative. It's as simple as that. Bonds and rates today. We're looking at the bond yields falling today. We're looking at a US 10-year 1.259, and it's fell a half a basis point, which is almost nothing. And the US 30-year has fell 1/3 of 1 basis point, and it's at 190.8. And finally, we finish off with the dollar index, and we see a falling dollar today. It's steadily falling. Yeah, it's falling because they're being accommodative. The dollar's going to be worth nothing. It's going to be worth nothing in the end. Big fat zero in the end. That's when they get rid of it and they bring out something new. They're going to have to in the end. But you'd be surprised how long they'll stick with those dollars, using them as they're hyperinflating. quite seriously, it might carry on for years. The hyperinflation. In other words, we're in a hyperinflation. We are a hyperinflation nation. And you get used to it. When it goes on for years like that, you get used to it. You get a certain mindset. Spend your money as fast as you can. Fast as you get it. Within an hour, run out and spend it all. Don't leave any left over, because the next day it's only worth half as much. I know that's hard to get your head around that. But everybody gets that same philosophy. And how do you get out of a hyperinflation if everybody's going to spend their money as fast as they can? You can't. Once you get entrenched, this inflation gets trenched, the mindset of the people changes toward the currency. They don't want to save anymore. See, right now there's an awful lot of saving going on. Tremendous amount. People are thinking, hey, this might deflate. Oh, I better save my money and everything else. We're working through this. But, once we start to really get into the inflation is obvious to everybody that that's the way it's going to be. It's going to be inflation. They're going to say, what have I been saving this money for? If it's going to be worth less in a few months. And once that gets entrenched, then it's impossible to remove that philosophy. They've lost confidence in the money then at that point. You can't get it back. Ever. And then it's just the road down, 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 and they have to keep adding zeros. And they have to keep printing more and more and more. It won't satisfy them anymore to print $1 trillion. You remember when they first started borrowing money? Oh, we're going to borrow $1 million. The government. Wow, that's a lot of money. And then later it was, we're going to borrow $1 billion. Oh, wow, that's a lot of money. And then later this is the way it is now. We're going to borrow $1 trillion. Oh, wow, that's a lot of money. Soon it's going to be, we're going to borrow $2 quadrillion. And then it's going to be 1,000, I don't even know what they call it, 1,000 quadrillion. This is where we're going. Thank you guys for listening. Like and subscribe, and we'll catch you guys in the next show. Bye-bye.